Arrogant lawyer mocks widow in court. What she reveals next shocks the judge. They thought she was just a grieving widow, powerless, broken, easy to silence. But what they didn't know was that Clara Jennings wasn't standing in that courtroom to cry. She was there to fight, with nothing but an old briefcase, a letter from the past, and the truth on her side. And when the ruthless lawyer mocked her in front of everyone, he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated the woman who had nothing left to lose. This is a story about betrayal, justice, and the quiet strength that refuses to be ignored. Clara Jennings stood frozen in the middle of the courtroom, her late husband's battered briefcase clutched tightly to her chest. Her palms were clammy, her pulse racing, and every instinct screamed at her to back down. But she couldn't. Robert wouldn't have wanted her to. Across the room, Damian Wells, the infamous lawyer known for dismantling his opponents with a smug grin and a razor-sharp tongue, leaned back in his chair. No proof, he sneered, his voice dripping with derision. Just another desperate widow trying to cling to something she doesn't deserve. For months, Clara had endured whispers behind her back, sleepless nights, and the relentless weight of doubt. But now, with trembling hands and a heart full of resolve, she set the briefcase on the judge's desk. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady for the first time that day, "I have evidence that will change everything. Everything." A gasp rippled through the silent courtroom, and for the first time, Wells's smirk wavered. From the quiet suburbs of Seattle to this pivotal moment, Clara's journey had been one of resilience, betrayal, and a widow's fight for truth. As she opened the briefcase and revealed an envelope hidden within, the air in the room thickened with anticipation. What lay inside had the power to shatter lies and expose a web of deception. Could it bring justice, or would it only deepen the chaos? The courtroom held its breath. Clara Jennings hadn't imagined she would end up here, standing in a courtroom filled with strangers, her hands trembling as she clutched Robert's old briefcase. The sharp scent of polished wood and the low murmur of voices blurred together, but her focus was fixed on two men seated across the room. Ethan Jennings, Robert's estranged brother, wore an expression of smug confidence, while Damian Wells, the notorious attorney, exuded calm arrogance. Every fiber of Clara's being told her they thought they had already won. She tightened her grip on the case, as if it were the only thing tethering her to courage. She couldn't fail Robert now. The judge's voice cut through her thoughts, calling the room to order. "Your Honor, my client has been unfairly accused by Mrs. Jennings, who seeks to benefit from a fraudulent claim. There is no evidence to support her case." His gaze fell on Clara, sharp and dismissive. The spectators murmured, and Clara felt her chest tighten. But she forced herself to breathe. Her late husband's briefcase held more than memories. It carried the truth. It had been 6 long months since Robert's tragic accident, a rainy night that had shattered her world. As she pieced her life together, Ethan emerged like a storm, contesting Robert's will and accusing her of forgery. Clara had been blindsided, dragged into a legal battle she didn't ask for, but she refused to back down. Robert's will, signed and notarized, was clear. Everything was hers. Yet Ethan's claims, bolstered by Wells's relentless attacks, had chipped away at her confidence. At home, the briefcase had sat untouched in the corner, a reminder of Robert she hadn't been ready to face. Until that night, the storm outside had mirrored her grief, thunder rumbling as she finally opened the case. Inside, among blueprints and old letters, she found an envelope tucked into a hidden pocket. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. Robert's handwriting was unmistakable. His words were filled with love and an urgency she hadn't expected. Robert had documented everything: Ethan's debts, his schemes, and evidence of betrayal. He had feared this very scenario and left behind the proof she would need. That letter reignited her resolve. Now, standing in court, Clara summoned every ounce of courage. She stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "Your Honor, I have evidence that will expose the truth." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The courtroom fell silent as she placed the envelope on the judge's desk. Wells's confidence faltered for a fraction of a second, but his sneer returned. "This is absurd," he scoffed. "Just another baseless attempt to waste the court's time." The judge adjusted his glasses, examining the envelope with meticulous care. The tension in the room was palpable, every eye on the desk as he opened it. Clara held her breath, her fingers clenching tightly at her sides. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was measured. "This document changes everything." The courtroom erupted in whispers, and Ethan shot to his feet. "This is a lie," he shouted, his face flushed with anger. She's making it all up. Wells placed a hand on his client's arm, urging him to sit, but his own composure was cracking. Clara remained silent, her gaze unwavering. She had expected their denial, their accusations, but she refused to let them intimidate her. As the court recessed, Clara stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding. "Wait a second. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this." Franklin Miles, the retired lawyer who had been helping her, approached with a reassuring smile. "You did well in there," he said, his voice calm. Robert would be proud. She nodded, but her thoughts were racing. She had delivered the evidence, yet she knew this fight was far from over. That night, Clara returned home to find the front door slightly ajar. Her breath hitched as she stepped inside. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. Panic surged as she rushed to her bedroom. The closet door was ajar, and Robert's briefcase, her lifeline, was gone. A creak from the back of the house froze her in place. Grabbing a heavy rolling pin from the kitchen, she crept toward the sound. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking but determined. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in black, clutching the briefcase. Their eyes locked for a tense moment before he bolted for the back door. "Stop!" Clara shouted, chasing him, but he was gone, disappearing into the night with everything she had fought for. She sank to the floor, her hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. The police arrived 20 minutes later, but the damage was done. Whoever had taken the briefcase knew exactly what they were looking for. The next morning, Clara and Franklin searched Robert's workshop, her last hope for answers. Dust covered every surface, the room untouched since his death. As she sifted through his tools, her fingers brushed against a locked cabinet. Inside, she found another envelope, thick with documents. Robert had left backups. Relief mixed with determination as she realized she still had a chance. In court, she presented the new evidence. But Wells was relentless. He introduced forged documents and hired a private investigator to discredit her. The trial became a battle of wits and willpower, with every small victory met by another challenge. Through it all, Clara clung to Robert's letter, his words a reminder to stay strong. Franklin's unwavering support kept her grounded as they dismantled Wells's lies one by one. Finally, after weeks of grueling testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Ethan's face was ashen, his bravado shattered, while Wells sat motionless, his reputation in ruins. Justice had prevailed. Months later, Clara stood in her garden, Robert's letter in her hand. The stars above seemed brighter, the air lighter. "Thank you, Robert," she whispered, "for trusting me, for believing in me." The fight had been brutal, but she had honored his memory, and that she knew was worth everything. Clara stood in her garden, the soft evening breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. In her hand, she held Robert's letter, the words that had guided her through the darkest days of her life. As she looked up at the stars, she felt something she hadn't in months: peace. The courtroom battles, the threats, and the betrayal had tested her in ways she never imagined. But they had also revealed the strength she didn't know she possessed. Robert's love had always been her anchor, but now she realized it was also her legacy to protect. Through this journey, Clara learned that truth might bend under pressure, but it never breaks. It took courage to fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. Ethan's schemes, Wells's lies, and the danger she faced weren't just obstacles. They were moments that shaped her resilience and deepened her resolve. She had fought not just for justice, but for the life and love she and Robert had built together. As she placed the letter back in its envelope and tucked it into her pocket, Clara turned toward her home with renewed purpose. Life would never be the same, but that was okay. Clara's story is a reminder that truth, no matter how buried or ignored, always finds its voice, especially when someone has the courage to speak it. She didn't set out to be a fighter. She simply wanted to protect what she and Robert built. But when the system tried to silence her, she stood her ground, with nothing but love, truth, and an old briefcase. In the end, she didn't just win the case. She reclaimed her dignity, her peace, and her power. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Every click helps us share more untold stories of strength, justice, and resilience.